Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Talk Whiskey. I'm Nick, here with you as always, and thanks for joining us for episode number 53. Now, the past few weeks we've reviewed some Irish whiskeys, and now we're going to take things back to the bourbon side of the whiskey world. So, what we have for you today is the Willett Pot Still Reserve Kentucky Straight Bourbon. So, what we obviously have here, first and foremost, is a nice little pot still glass decanter, which is very interesting, very lovely. But in terms of how the juice is made, it's going to be made first, with a standard column still, and then sort of as a doubler would, at least the word around the campfire is that they use a doubler, which is a pot still, like you see here, for the second distillation. So there's that for you. Makes a nice little glug glug coming out, which is always lovely. So what do we know about it? Well, they bottle it at 47% ABV, so that's a little bit nicer, getting us up there to 94 proof. Again, anytime we can get away from the standard, diluted down to 40% ABV, it's always good. Gives us a little bit more to play with. So they've done a pretty good job here with giving us some information about it. Not all the information, of course, because it is made via the Willett Distillery, or also known as Kentucky Bourbon Distillers, Ltd. So what they are is basically an independent bottler, and they make a bunch of other things, which I'm sure you've probably come across, and some are highly sought after by collectors, for the most part. But seeing as I like to drink whiskey, I tend not to collect a lot of things for the purpose of keeping it on a shelf. Just doesn't make too much sense to me. So, anyway, independent bottler, probably getting their juice from Heaven Hill or something like that. I'm not sure exactly where, but so they're not exactly making their own. What it does say, though, is that it's distilled, aged, and bottled in Kentucky. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a Kentucky bourbon. And it gives you a little bit more information if you're playing along at home. The bottle number 42 of 274 for this cask, which was 4479. So there's definitely a lot out there of this. Maybe not exactly where you live, but in terms of how many casks they had of this and how many bottles they get out of it. It's always interesting to look when they give you information like that, not only barrel number, but which bottle of that single barrel, which is really interesting because you can see really how much evaporation, takes its play with bourbon in general, especially being in Kentucky. So let's go in for the nose. So the color first. We have a really warm amber, definitely a deep copper tone there. Now the first thing you get off of this is definitely that raw, wooded, new white, charred American oak barrel is definitely coming in there. Those wood tannins are definitely pulling through, which like fresh cut wood. If you're ever in, a lumber yard or something like that, or if you work in a shop somewhere where you get sort of that overpowering smell of fresh cut wood, it's just a beautiful thing. Also, what you're getting on it is a little bit of honey, just a little tinge of that, a little bit of fruitiness. It's hard to pin down exactly what fruit is in there, but it does have a nice sort of fragrant fruitiness to it. But definitely what sort of is the driving force behind this whiskey is definitely the oak influence. So let's go in for a taste. Now definitely, right off the bat, you're still getting a lot of those wood, oaky influences that you might expect. following the nose. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes what you're tasting can be completely different from what the nose was. But in the case of the Willett, what you get in the nose is the same thing that follows up in the taste. The only thing that's a little bit different, and it's really interesting to pin down, is sort of this underripe peach sort of fruitiness to it, which is not overpowering, but it's just a little bit of a hint. Sort of balances nicely with a little taste of honey that's in there. Definitely some of your trademark bourbon profile in there in terms of the vanilla. Got some of that charcoal interaction that's going on in there, giving you a little bit of a creamier, full-bodied, real substantial mouthfeel, which is interesting. So let's go in for one last taste. I will say though that being bottled at 47% ABV, it's not overpowering. It's not kicking you in the teeth when you drink it with this big rush of alcohol or anything like that. It's really sort of a well crafted, and I'm assuming well aged probably a little bit beyond the 2 years that gives us the title of a Kentucky straight bourbon. So there's definitely a little bit of an older air about this whiskey for sure. But overwhelmingly so, what's carrying through is the oak, like I mentioned, but it's really sort of eased in. It's not a robust, spicy. It's not a Jack Daniel's, green label or anything like that. It doesn't feel like it's overly spry or something like that, or it's been aged in a really small barrel, for a longer period of time or something like that, where you'd really get sort of a little bit too much of a wood influence in there. What you have here is sort of a nice balance between the wood, the oakiness, and these vanilla honey notes that are in there, which really give it a good grounding, if you will. So if you're looking for something that is a little bit of the woodier side of bourbon, but not overpoweringly substantial in terms of the body, or feeling like you have to take really small sips or something like that to get through it. It's not like an old Grandad 114, which obviously is a higher proof, but that's whiskey that is just real. It's almost not even like a liquid. It's got like sort of a viscosity to it, which is just more reminiscent of like an oily texture, which is interesting. But if you're looking for something that is a little bit woodier, but well balanced, a good proof, and that sort of thing, if you can get your hands on it, it's definitely a good buy for the money. Now, it's not outrageously priced. It is a bit higher. Obviously, the decanter in here is going to, send the value up $8 or $10. So I got this a while ago, but I think it was around $52. So I'm not sure exactly what it's going for now, because it's probably been a year since I picked this up. But just let me know if you've seen anything close to that price around where you are, or it could be completely off. So in terms of a score, I think it is safe to give it a Straight Talk Whiskey score of 89 out of 100. Now, the reason for that score is, like I said, it's a nice balance, sort of these wood tannins that are, definitely playing a huge part in the whiskey. It's, settled down a little bit by the vanilla and sort of charcoal, which really mellows it out a little bit. And that's all well and good, and the 47% ABV is definitely helpful, but there's definitely some room for improvement. It's a great sipping whiskey, but it's not, in terms of the finish, which I didn't talk about too much. It's pretty fleeting, and that's interesting for something that's 94 proof. It doesn't feel like it stays around for dinner, but it's leaving after the appetizer. It's not to say it isn't delicious, but it's just not in for the long haul. So that's sort of the reasoning behind it. Not saying it's a bad whiskey or anything like that, just sort of putting it in context with the things that are out there and the things that I've yet to have that, I'm hoping are just elevated all that much higher. So there you have it. That's episode 53. Join us next week. I'm not sure what we'll do. May go to the Scotch side of things and see what's cooking up there. But either way, it'll be fun. So cheers to you. If you're going to drink responsibly as always, and we'll see you next week.